Warning, listening to Unleash Your Genius can be good for your health.
Symptoms may include looking and feeling better.
More energy, healthier kids, and increased productivity.
Unleash Your Genius podcast brings you the science, art, and philosophy of health, wellness,
epigenetics, and lifestyle. Stronger, fitter, faster.
Naturally, holistically, simply.
Hey, welcome to the Unleash Your Genius podcast. I'm Dr. Brian Peterson. I'm your host, and my guest today is Jasmine Cabrera. Jasmine is a certified Primal health coach and a personal trainer. She helps you get clear on how to make eating and exercise work for you as an individual while not making you stressed out or lose sleep about it. Jasmine uses a holistic approach to health, so you're not going to get any cookie cutter protein shake pushing nonsense out of her. She was once extremely frustrated with her own health, and she used to live in a steady state of anxiety, bloating, and brain fog. She exercised like crazy and ate really well, or at least she thought she did, but nothing would really get her better and stay better. And then she discovered that all of her anxiety issues, or brain fog and bloating mishaps, which she calls unending gas, were being caused by how she ate and worked out. So she plunged herself into learning nutrition and human biology again, and did her homework on food history. And she found out that many people just like you are being misinformed, misunderstood, and misled about how to live optimally. So Jasmine's job is to help you finally locate that desperately needed route outside of the pill-popping lane to solve your health issues. Hey, Jasmine, how are you going?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm awesome. Thank you. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this, actually. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, I already introduced you, but can you tell us a little bit more about you, who you are as a person?
Yeah, so I'm a happily married wife. I've been married for about 3 years. My husband's name is Ray. He's like my ace. He's my best friend kind of thing. Met him while when I was studying abroad in St. Kitts and Nevis, like a little island in the Caribbean, and we've pretty much been attached at the hip ever since then.
Nice.
So yeah, we're both pretty down to earth people, spiritual people, and so we kind of live our lives in harmony with Bible principles. So because we're both Jehovah's Witnesses, so pretty much I am an extreme extrovert, sometimes to a fault. So I'm at my best basically when I'm spending times with friends and I'm out hiking or mountain biking. And anyone who knows me well knows that my free time pretty much revolves around three things: cooking, CrossFit, and being the biggest goofball I can possibly be.
You guys don't have any kids?
No, we're too young for that.
Wow.
No, that's more like next phase of life for us. I think I'm still a little selfish with my time. I don't even like to get up at 7 a.m. So a kid they couldn't deal with me. They'd be like, "Mom, you're slacking on your mom job. Please get it together."
Hey,
so I'm saved in the dread.
And so you lived in the Caribbean for a while. Where were you born?
So I actually was born not too far from where we live now. I was born in this little town called Amherst, Virginia, population like 34,000 people. And I grew up there. Pretty much my entire family has grown up there, like at least 4 generations. So I ended up going to the University of Virginia, which is about an hour away from the hometown I grew up in. And about my last year at UVA, I studied abroad to St. Kitts and Nevis. It was like a disaster preparedness program that I did there. And that's how I got to the Caribbean. And then after about a year and a half after my initial visit there, I actually ended up moving there for about almost 2 years.
Because you met Ray.
Because I met Ray. He's like my Dominican heartthrob. But so we've been back stateside for about a year now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And so you are a personal trainer and a Primal health coach.
Yes, both. Those are my traits.
Awesome. How long have you been doing the personal training for?
So I've been doing personal training for about 6 years now. I started out thinking I was going to do the physical therapy route, and I was like gung-ho for that for the longest time. And then I had the opportunity to intern with a physical therapist, and it just hit me. It's like, man, I do not want to be stuck in a box for 8 hours a day with this glass ceiling of not being able to, try new things or be able to help people on the front end, like do preventative medicine or preventative care as opposed to after they've had an injury. And so I just realized that it wasn't in me to do physical therapy. And plus, I didn't want 3 more years of school and $90,000 plus worth of tuition debt. So I just hung it up. I forgot. I stopped going that route. Pretty much at the very end of my undergrad time, which was looking back on it, that was hard.
That was a big
I've always been the
decision.
game plan person. Yeah, because I've always had like, okay, this is next. So for about 3 or 4 months, I was like, what am I doing now? Right. But it just so happened that I had a part-time gig as a personal trainer while I was in school, and it was so rewarding for me to be able to see people nail things that they've been failing at for weeks or even months, and it was just so gratifying. So I was like, hey, if I could feel good like this every day, why not? So I just continued with that. Nice.
So then you became you did that for about 6 years, and now you're a Primal health coach. Can you tell us about that? What is a Primal health coach?
Yeah, so basically, a Primal health coach is not a doctor, they're not a therapist, they're not, a registered dietitian, but basically we approach health and your physical well-being from a holistic standpoint, following the Primal Blueprint model, which was created by Mark Sisson. And essentially, it just helps a person, and this is the short and sweet version of it, but it really helps a person to look at themselves as a whole being, from not just, how they're exercising and what they're eating, but also things like, how are you managing your day-to-day stress, and what is the quality of your life outside of your job and with your family and things of that nature. And so in my experience, basically, I found that being a Primal health coach is about teaching you how to just pipe down a little bit and listen to what's going on in your body and what your body is trying to tell you, as opposed to just throwing dogmatic things on what you think is happening. So I've spent a lot of time with clients who have adopted more of a conventional Western medicine mindset when it comes to their health, which is like identify the problem, tag the problem, blame the problem on something. And to illustrate that, think about someone who has gained some weight, someone who's like, they're saying, oh, I'm fat. And then they think, okay, I'm fat because I'm not exercising. So their next train of thought is to start working out because that's the reason they've gained all this weight. And so to me, this is a learned reaction that many people have, and how a Primal health coach is different from any other wellness or health coach that you may encounter is that we wouldn't agree with that execution of how things went down. We'd be more like, oh, okay, so you've gotten heavy. So how are you sleeping? Or what type of stress are you carrying around at work or at home?
Right.
And, and so, how is your stomach acting after you eat a meal? So the objective really for a Primal health coach is to put you back in the driver's seat of your own health. The approach is like, again, to look at you as a whole person and look at your life as a whole. It's basically, we're trying to look at everything to determine what's influencing why there has been something thrown off whack as far as your health is concerned before we make a single suggestion. And then those suggestions are going to be presented in a way that you're able to understand how your body is going to react and use whatever you put in it or do to it. And then in a way that you're able to fix the problem if it ever arises again, in a nutshell. I think that pretty much explains how a Primal health coach is kind of different.
Yeah, cool. So it's not really treating anything. It's not treating your overweightness or treating your lack of energy. It's really taking an overall holistic of how the body probably functions, and then getting people to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much just like that.
So tell us, you must have some interesting stories. Can you share anything, like, some clients that, maybe some listeners might be modeling right now so that they maybe, do you have any stories that you could share with our listeners?
Oh man. Well, I think it's more of like an overall theme I'm seeing with clients. I think the biggest challenge with a brand new client is they are revving to go. They have it in their head that, oh my goodness, so I'm about to do something great and this all sounds great. And so I have to put a lot of effort into this. So I'm going to have to like kill myself off trying to get this right. And so they're completely thrown for a loop when I tell them, no, it's supposed to be easy. They're like, what? They're just completely stumped by that. And they kind of don't believe me. They question it every coaching call, like every week. So you sure I'm only supposed to be doing this amount of exercise, or you sure I'm supposed to be eating this much fat, or you sure? Like they're like allowed to eat sin.
Sorry, what did you say? What are they allowed to eat?
They're allowed to eat butter, and they think it's a sin.
Yeah.
It's so bad to eat. But I'm like, no, but margarine, yes, that's bad to eat, but not the butter. Go ahead and indulge a little bit. And so they just have a hard time believing that less is more. And that's just an across the board story with every client that I have. That pretty much is.
Cool. Because I think when you think about losing weight and the exercise, I always think of like The Biggest Loser. And have you ever, when you watch The Biggest Loser, like every episode, they're like just going hard out the whole time.
Yeah. And those trainers, they make me flinch. I'm just like, stop giving us such a bad name with that. I mean, I'm not bashing anyone, but there are other methods to getting. Yeah, I just can't watch it. It makes me feel a little upset, so I just don't watch them.
And so your clients, like, they don't have to work that hard, right? I mean, they don't have to. Every workout doesn't have to be at the max. So it sounds like it's pretty fun, really, right?
That's the goal. Honestly, my biggest things that I'm focusing on is like, look, this needs to be realistic. This needs to be sustainable, and you actually have to like it. Like, I want you to do this. I want you to have fun, because when you think about it, how else is anything going to stick if you hate it and it's brutal?
Yeah, you can only do that for so long.
Yeah, the human body is not wired that way.
Yeah. You must love being a health coach.
Man, yeah, it is definitely one of the most rewarding things I've allowed myself to get into. I love it because I'm a little bit of a geek in the sense of I like talking about how the body processes things and how it views things when we eat it. And I love taking these huge, very complex theories and breaking them down into digestible concepts that people can apply and regurgitate if they need to, or not regurgitate, but kind of explain to someone else, trying to put it in a way that the average person can deal with without overwhelming, Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, let's talk about that actually. So a lot of people, like when you first start working with someone, they may not, I think a lot of people are looking for energy, right? More energy.
Yeah. Energy is a big one.
Mitochondria, right? The mitochondria. And let's talk about that a little bit. How the cells in our body can actually produce energy.
Through mitochondrial biogenesis.
Yeah. So, that is a big subject matter in a sense that it could be a little bit intimidating because we're thinking about, okay, so, and I might not go as deep on this as you would want me to, just for whatever reason. But I find that when it comes to creating energy or getting more energetic, it's not about what we can do more of. It's kind of like, what can we back off of to let the body do what it wants?
Yeah.
And so
the body's so amazing because it is, it's a self-healing, it's self-regulating, and it responds to our demands, right? It's not just a machine. I mean, there is mechanical approaches to it, but we're also vitalistic. We're always producing and growing. And when you put the body under stress, like what what you're talking about with exercise, the body responds to that by producing more of these things called mitochondria, which are inside a cell, right? We are all just made
powerhouse.
they're the powerhouse of the cell. And as humans, we're like 75 trillion cells, right? And each one of those cells has these mitochondria in it. And just to make a long story really short, when we exercise, when we stress our body needs to up that demand. And so we actually produce more of these organelles called mitochondria. And the mitochondria produce fuel for us to run. So just, I don't want to get too complicated, but just imagining that the more you work, your body perceives that, and it actually starts producing things that can help your body fuel itself further. So I think when people understand a little bit more about how the body works, right, it might motivate as well.
Yeah, I mean, the greatest thing about the human body is it's so willing to adapt to whatever situation is happening, almost to a fault, like where it'll do it to the point where you will have your cortisol levels are through the roof and you're chronically stressed out, So we have to recognize that it is okay. It's just as okay to ease off the gas pedal with our bodies as it is to know when to press the gas pedal down. Right. And I think that's a big deal, Balance,
right? Yeah, you got to have that balance of go and rest.
Awesome. Yeah. Can't have one without the other. Rest is not the enemy. I have a client who, when that stuck with him, he was like, oh my goodness, that makes so much sense, because he's very outdoor active, as far as he has like a 25-acre farm, and he does the entire maintenance by himself.
Wow.
And so, he's thinking that he has to punch it at all times. I'm like, no, I mean, it's okay for you to take rest and take breaks. So when he adopted it in his workouts, he was able to see that also when he was at home with his farm. And that's not his main thing. That's what he does on the side, his farm. And so when he started to adopt that in every other aspect of his life, when he was physically active, he saw the reward system of that. So that's a small little piece of the pie on how there needs to be a balance component, and it's not just because you go to sleep at night does that fix everything.
Yeah. You really helped him because you gave him the big picture as well, right? You didn't just give him like, here, do this, here, do that. Like, you changed his perception of how his body works, and then he responded by doing the things that are better for him. That's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks.
Hey, Jasmine.
Imagine you're speaking in front of the entire Unleash Your Genius podcast listeners. And they're all going through this 90-day challenge. What are your 3 best topics, or what are the 3 things that you want to get across to help them succeed the best?
Or my biggest 3 pieces of advice.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Okay. Number 1, don't dabble. Dabbling is dangerous and it's useless. So don't do it. When it comes to all of this stuff about really honing in on what helps you function at your optimal capacity, there's living when you're at your optimal is the greatest feeling. You have, going back to energy, you have this energy that you've never experienced before, so I can't articulate it for you. You just have to experience for yourself. A lot of people may not have experienced it since they were a kid, if at all. So that's one thing. So that's why I'm saying don't dabble, just dive all the way in. And then as you approach this, think of it as putting yourself in front of a problem as opposed to being behind a problem. We face this a lot in our culture or in our society, where healthcare is based on figuring out what has happened to potentially treat problems and eventually potentially treat the symptoms to eventually get to a problem. But when you are working on living in a very optimal way, where you're listening to your body and you're feeding it what it's always wanted, you just didn't know it, then you're placing yourself ahead of anything that could potentially happen. So that if something were to arise, you've already have your mitt out ready to catch it, per se, and not just trying to figure out where the ball landed.
Right.
And so that's the second piece of advice. Mainly because being in front of a problem means that you're thriving, and being behind one just means that you're barely surviving. And surviving is like having to take medications every day and having achy joints after playing with your kids on the floor. That's what surviving is. It's not glamorous. It's not something that people brag about. But thriving is when you can do those everyday activities and still have the energy to take like a weekend hiking trip, or do spontaneous things that you haven't done because you're always placing that, I'm getting too old for that. My body doesn't react the way it used to. Those shouldn't be excuses when you're thriving, you know?
Yeah.
And the last thing I would say is just to have fun, be human. You figure out how to enjoy being healthy. And the word healthy and diet, I don't like to use that often because they're thrown around so much. They're like abused, but right. Figure out the best way it works for you, because it should be how you live every day for the rest of your life. So if there's something about it that you don't like, figure out how to make it something that you can like, or find an alternative. But don't look at it as, I'm just going to do this for the allotted time and then go back to what I used to do.
Right.
Because then you just dabbled and wasted your time.
Right. And that's what a coach is for, right? To kind of help you, guide you in that, find that.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. We're here to help you adhere, strike that balance and stick with it. It's just like anything that, everyone should take a moment and think back to a time in their life with something they've embarked on something that was really meaningful to them. I don't know, for me, it was the first time I ever got on a bicycle, and then it grew to me building a ramp. And then after building the ramp, I'm trying to build ramps everywhere. And I felt free to play on a bicycle. Now, that's just my small example, but I still ride a bike today, this many years later, because it was something that was just so fun for me. So when it comes to your health, you have to do that sort of thing. Look and explore and try new things to find something that is fun for you that you don't already have, if you don't already have that, because everyone should have that sort of playful pleasure in their life, something that they can just do. And it can be independent of other people or other things and not based on anyone's expectations other than your own.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, have you come up against, when you have a client, obviously a lot of them have partners as well. Do you deal with that? Is there some resistance from the partner sometimes? Do you see that?
Well, only when the partner is vegan.
Okay.
That's
right.
the only time. That's the only time. I'm
not budging on that.
Yeah, because it's a completely different field of thought. And one thing about, being a primal health coach is that we learn that there's something good and there's beauty in just about every ideology of eating there is. So there's no need to sit there and fuss with someone about them being vegan or us being people who enjoy to have red meat on our plate most of the time. But basically what I try to do when I get to a client that may have a significant other who is in that space where they're not fully agreeing with what these changes that this person is trying to make for their own betterment. We just try to find common ground. If it's not on the actual food itself, it's on what are we trying to achieve here. If eating, couscous every night is not working for your husband, are you really being as big of a support to him as his wife? Yeah. And when you start plucking those hearts and emotional things about, you're a partnership because you're married, then they start to be like, okay, I'll ease off and I'll understand that not everything we're going to do in 100% unison. And sometimes we have to agree to disagree. And I'm not trying to be anyone's marriage counselor or anything, but that's how I found that I can get that significant other to support this person who they're really trying to figure it out. The type of client that I serve is the person who has been there and done that. They have tried numerous programs and diets and maybe other nutritionists, they've gotten bad news from physicians they've gone to. They're just tired of trying everything else and just not striking gold. And so my job, what I really push myself to do is to help me be the last stop on figuring it out. And if I can't help them right then and there, I will try my very hardest to get them in front of the people who will help them so that this could be the last stop. They don't have to figure out anymore necessarily what's going on with their bodies and why they're just not able to live in the way that they want to live.
Right. Jasmine, we put together the Unleash Your Genius podcast is really to help people, break the chains that have been placed on our health due to the modern lifestyle. As humans, we really aren't built for sitting in boxes on a computer, eating stuff out of a box. We were born to be like wild animals, foraging and moving and lifting. But the industrial lifestyle doesn't allow us to do that. So we pretty much have to change some behaviors that we've learned over the years. And making those changes is hard, and difficult. And it's like quitting some bad habits. Have you personally, did you have to change did you always eat perfectly? Did you go through a phase where you had to change your lifestyle?
Yeah, I definitely didn't always eat perfectly.
And you probably still don't.
I mean, who does? We're imperfect humans, right? But I grew up in the South, so we ate hearty meals and biscuits.
Right, biscuits and gravy.
They are an amazing thing, unfortunately, for my stomach. But honestly, the hardest change for me was giving up bread. Right. It seems for such a simple thing, it was such a big deal. I mean, I was the person who could easily go to Subway and down an entire foot long like it was my day job, and look around like, are you going to eat your part? Because I would eat that too. But what I learned is that my stomach and my mind were not benefiting from it. I never necessarily had like terrible digestive pain. Like I didn't have really bad stomach cramps or anything after eating bread, but I was always bloated. And mind you, I was a 2 to 3 varsity sport player, athlete every season, every year.
What'd you play?
Through grade school. I played competitive basketball and softball. And so when I wasn't playing in school, I was on a travel team playing. Right. And then, I lived in a neighborhood with a bunch of boys. So there was always kickball games going on. Nice. And bike races and go-karts. I was always very active, but I had like this chronic pudge in my stomach. You would have thought I was like preggers or something. And it's just like, it was no matter how fit I was everywhere else, I still had this stomach issue. I was so always bloated. I always felt like I was just going to push out of my clothes after eating a meal. And even though being a student was like the most important priority for me when I was growing up, there would be like these moments of intense brain fog, and that continued on with me when I went through grade school. When I went through university, where it was like I was either anxious all the time or not able to think clearly. And I was still, even in college, working my fanny off and trying to be studious. And it's always felt like my body was working against what I was trying to do. And it wasn't until one summer that I was taking a chemistry class. Of all things, I hated chemistry, but I had to take this summer chemistry class. And I want to say it was the first time I was introduced to Mark's Daily Apple. And I read something about bread. And I pretty much could handle a loaf of bread by myself in my apartment in a week, because I would make sandwiches out of it. I would make French toast out of it. It was my loaf of bread. Don't touch it. Right. And so, and something told me, it's like, if you drop the bread, maybe it could work on, that bloating issue. It's like, all right. So at the time I was biking back and forth to class instead of driving because it was so close and finding parking was horrendous. But for a week and a half, I did not have bread and I was biking to class. And not only did the pudge thing with the stomach stop, but I was able to drop this weight that I wasn't trying to drop. And chemistry made sense. It didn't have that brain fog or that's like, nope, you're not going to get this today. And I was like, whoa, well, the only thing I changed was the bread. Ding! And that's really what started the ball rolling on paying attention. How does my body react to food?
Right. Practical applications of chemistry.
Practical applications of chem.
That's awesome. All right. So, look, do you fall off track now?
I mean, yeah, I'm an ice cream girl.
Ice cream.
Ice cream.
Yeah.
And I mean, the good stuff. There is a little ice cream company it was not little. It's around the country. It's called Kilwins, and they have some of the best creamy, delicious, full-fat ice cream you ever want to put a tongue on.
Right.
And I enjoy it. I don't honestly. People say, "Oh, that's falling off the wagon," or "That's falling off track," but like getting back to what we mentioned before about balance. I enjoy ice cream, and I don't ever want to imagine a life without ice cream, and dairy doesn't bother my stomach. So occasionally I allow myself to go and have a double scoop of Kilwins, and it's enjoyable, and it's a part of living to me. So also keep in mind that you don't have to be literally dogmatically spick and span about your eating at all times. You just have to know when and what you can eat sometimes, and not let it become a habitual thing that burns down your whole house kind of thing.
Yeah. Hey, you know, and I think the more natural you can get things as well, right? You don't have to give up everything, but as long as you can pronounce what's on the label, right?
Exactly.
If it doesn't have a number behind it, you know, and you recognize that it once grew from the earth, and it's probably good for you, no matter how much they mix it up or whatever. Or not, you know what I mean? It's not as bad as all of the numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So, you know, a lot of people, when they're switching their lifestyle, you've got to learn how to cook, right? You got to get back into the kitchen, or else you're just going to be eating that bread all the time. So were you always, I mean, obviously you weren't because you were eating bread, but how did you transition to learning how to cook? Or is it something that you like to do?
Yeah. So like I mentioned before, is one of my free time things. Cooking is something that I actually enjoy doing. And maybe it's because I came from a family of cooks. So when I was a kid, if it was either my mom or my aunt, I mean, you pull up a chair beside the stove or beside the chop board, and you ask questions and you observe. And a lot of times they let you get your hands dirty. And so I think my first successful meal probably was when I was like 13. I burned everything up until 13, but or undercooked things until I was 13. But learning how to cook isn't as intimidating as it can appear if you just start with a clean slate, which means like do a pantry purge. Don't start with the crap that conventional eating tells us is healthy, and start with your go-tos. Have go-tos from the get-go. So for instance, I have a client who, when I first started with him, one of the immediate things that he said was, I can't cook. I don't do cooking well. I just can't do that. And I was like, okay, we can work on that. It's not a big deal. But what happened was that within those first couple of sessions, we did a pantry purge. And when I started to explain to him, forget the nutrition label as first, look at the ingredients. And when I started to explain to him what certain ingredients were, like these are industrial seed oils and these are processed soy products, and this is what these things do, his eyes got as big as golf balls, and it really just dawned on him, hey, I have to get over what I think I can't do and get on the horse for cooking for myself. Because up until then, he had pretty much, I guess, eaten every meal out.
Wow.
Every meal was prepared for him, or a majority of them. And so what helped him, and I think is a cool trick to understand, is know what you like and create go-to meals with those things to get you started. Get really good at those things you like. So for, breakfast, if you're into I don't know, if you're into omelets, get really good at cooking an omelet. Let that be your thing, right? For lunch, if you like tuna salad, get really good at making tuna salad, or get really good at preparing a meat and a vegetable, and just have those things that make it easier for you. And when you're planning, or when you're trying to, when you're trying to plan your meals, don't put more on your plate than you can handle. If you're the type of person who gets overwhelmed after planning today's lunch and today's dinner, don't plan anything other than today's lunch and today's dinner, Yeah. And so take it with baby steps when it comes to that part. So starting with a clean state, have go-tos, and take baby steps. That's what I would say when it comes to cooking.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Sorry, Jasmine, I just got to hold up a second.
Okay. Take your time.
That's all right. That's the beauty of edit.
Right?
All right. So that was cool. I'm just taking a couple notes here. Okay, cool. Hey, Jasmine, what's your favorite form of exercise? What do you enjoy doing yourself?
That's a loaded question. I guess that the only thing I don't like is hot yoga.
Okay.
Like I that feels like torture. I did it once with a good friend of mine, and I just felt like I was suffocating. But I guess my go-to things, I really love CrossFit. So I'm a member down at Solidarity CrossFit down here in Charlottesville. So shout out to the guys down there. My coach is there. Shameless plug for them.
We'll put a link in there for them.
Yeah, Solidarity. That's where it's at. That's some of the best coaching in town you're going to get. But I love CrossFit. I enjoy learning new skill sets like the gymnastics and the Olympic barbell lifting components. Outside of that, I live in a semi-mountainous area. So hiking is a regular thing. Mountain biking, when I can get someone to go on the trails with me, is a regular thing. Right. And just, taking walks. I mean, it's nothing like fresh air when you've put in a day's work, Yeah. Just to kind of like recharge and go take a walk and do it barefoot. It makes you feel so much better.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to think walking was just a waste of time, but it's like, oh, I got to run or sprint or do something. But walking is so valuable for a number of different ways.
It really is. It's such a basic human function that we take for granted. Right. It really is. It's just like being able to sit into a squat. It's like a party trick I have when we go to get-togethers. I'll say, "Can you sit in a squat?" And they look at me like I'm stupid. But then I'll sit there for like 5 minutes, and they're like, "I can't do that. I stopped being able to do that so long ago." I was like, "This is what you're supposed to be able to do. That's normal. This is supposed to feel like a rest position." and so conversations like that pop up regularly. But yeah, so those are pretty much the things I like to do. I'm very much so an outdoor person, and if I can find time to get outside, I do. And for people who are not outside people, you're really missing out.
Right. Yeah, nature, man, it's so important.
Yeah, find an outdoorsy friend.
Well, the reason why I asked that question is because a lot of times when people are starting out, they think, oh my gosh, I got to go to the gym and I've got to lift the weights and I got to hit the treadmill. And so when you get these different answers, right, like, there's so many different ways of getting that exercise. It can vary too. Sometimes I'll go through periods where I just do sprints a few times and a week. And then there'll be other times where I just walk and do some push-ups, and it doesn't have to be complicated or, regimented. It can go by how you feel too, like how you interpret your body is feeling right now, and you don't have to push it.
Yeah, exactly. I call it ebb and flow.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Hey, Jasmine, we're running out of time. Do you have enough time for a couple more questions?
Sure. I mean, go for it.
This is the rapid fire section. So, Jasmine, what's your favorite book?
Oh,
you can't say the Primal Blueprint either. That's already been said.
No. That's hard. I'm one of those type of people, like, I'll read a book and 2 years later I forget it. Right. So I'll just say out the Bible. I'll just say that. That's my favorite book.
Perfect.
Can't go wrong there.
So what's the best advice you've ever received?
The best advice I ever received is don't be afraid to be you. That helps me not to want to put myself in a box. So don't be afraid to be yourself. I think that's the best advice I've ever had.
Do you have a favorite quote or favorite motto?
I have a lot of them, but I think the one that just keeps recurring for me at this present point in my life is actually one that I think is by Denzel Washington. And it's a setback is a setup for a comeback.
Say that again.
A setback is a setup for a comeback.
Nice. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Learn from your mistakes.
Yeah. Look at failures as opportunities, that sort of thing.
Right. Cool. Hey, Jasmine.
Learning experience. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hey, how can people get in touch with you?
So if you, for instance, if you find yourself, in one of these situations we're talking about where you're between a rock and a hard space and you want to improve your health, or you just desire to have some more tailor-made direction when it comes to being physically fit or being more physically capable, you can check out my online fitness coaching and my online health coaching programs at www.chiseltraining.com. And if you are into social media at all, you can find me on Facebook at Chisel Training, and then also on Instagram at Chisel Training.
Cool. Chisel Training. That sounds awesome. So so tell me a little bit more about Chisel Training. Can you, is it, so you do, like, I'm in Australia. Could you coach me from here? You could?
Yeah, I definitely could. So online coaching and training are definitely a big component of what I do as a health coach and a personal trainer, because I've realized that, people who are not necessarily in my backyard can really benefit from me or value the things that I talk about. So if you are in the United States or in Canada or in Australia or anywhere and you have internet access, come talk to me.
It's a small world.
Small world.
All right. So www.chiseltraining.com. I'll have links to all of your stuff on the Unleash Your Genius website.
Awesome.
Jasmine, thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This has been great.
Thanks so much for listening to Unleash Your Genius with your host, Dr. Brian Peterson. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit unleashyourgenius.com. We'll catch you next time.
Hey, what's up? I hope you guys liked this episode. And if you did, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe. And most importantly, give us a review and give us a 5-star rating too, please. All right. See ya. Oh, wait. And don't forget www.unleashyourgenius.com. Come check us out. All information provided by the Unleash Your Genius podcast is of opinion only and should not be taken as a substitute for speaking to a qualified health provider. Please seek advice from a qualified health professional before acting on any advice given on the Unleash Your Genius podcast.